Greetings and welcome to Halfling 13 Gaming. It is June 1st, 2024, and this is my weekly blog. Join us today as we discuss our recent activities and upcoming plans, both in gaming and hobby-related activities. Greetings and welcome to Halfling 13 Gaming. This is our weekly blog. It is now June 1st, 2024. But at least by the time this is being posted, and this is the latest updates and happenings with our channel and our various group activities. First big news we've been talking about is our big bowling night. Most of our group got together for a evening of bowling at one of the local bowling alleys. And this was to celebrate, I think it was 4 birthdays. Jenny, Jennifer, Robin, and Valerie, all turning 1 year older at their respective ages. We opted to get together for a fun night of bowling, and I think the final count came into about 20 people or so, across 3 different lanes, with several people just watching and participating, socializing, and so forth. For myself, I haven't bowled in quite a while, probably a year or 2 at least. Not professional by any means, none of us really are. Although a couple of the kids, I have to say, are pretty good on with their bowling teams and all their practice that they do. They scored in the high 100s, so 170 or so. My average came in at 140, although given the number of people and the limited lanes, we were really only able to get about a game and a half in. So typically, I start off passable, get strong near the end of the first game, and then crash about midway through the second game. And then generally feel it the next couple of days because my bones are old and don't really work too well for me. But so far, I haven't had any lingering effects, probably because of the shorter game. And like I said, everybody had a lot of fun. Lots of pizza, lots of good drinks. Everybody was nice and socializing and seemed to be a good time for everybody. So no doubt we'll try it again at some point. I did suggest next time go do some paintballing. Wives weren't really all that excited about that, but we'll have to see what our next big activity will end up being. As of yesterday, the latest battle report has been posted. This is battle report number 81. And sees our first battle with the Imperial Range Troopers and the Clone Commandos. We had George and Carter competing again. This time George opted to play the Empire while Carter played the Republic. And turned out to be a pretty decent use and demonstration of the 2 new units. They fielded commanders of Yoda and Veers with Bosk, respectively, for the fight. But really, the major focus of the battle was really to show off and use the new units, see how they worked, see how they performed. During the battle, we did have a bit of a controversy over the aspects of advanced targeting. Several of the feedback and comments that we've received on the video have been interesting, decent feedback, etc. That we fundamentally did advanced targeting wrong. Our mistake here was that we read the text on the card, which, as I've come to learn, is merely a suggestion or reminder rather than actual text to follow, at least when it's in parentheses and italics. That's a section of the rulebook I hadn't realized. I mean, it is a long rulebook, lots of complications. So what we should have done is reference the actual rules for advanced targeting, which makes it fairly clear. At the time, none of us thought to do so, so we referenced the card text itself. And the text for the Range Troopers makes it kind of vague, kind of confusing. Ended up house ruling and adjusting at the time. All the players agreed on the interpretation and the use. Basically what it meant is we weren't going to measure first if we wanted the free aim. So at least one move, we ended up not taking the free aim, and then measuring, verifying range, and so forth. Officially, you get the aim anyways, as long as you shoot at the correct target, in this case being troopers. So as long as you're shooting at a trooper, doesn't matter range or otherwise, when you measure, etc., you just get a free aim. So it's a bonus versus shooting at troopers. Now that we know that, obviously that'll be an easy one to remember in the future. But it was being a new rule, at least for us, new units, etc., it made a little bit of a interesting mix and a bit of a debate in the comments following up on the video. So, as usual, I'm always open to any feedback and comments, as long as it's polite and constructive. We by no means claim to be perfect or experts at any of the game, so we're always looking for feedback and constructive criticism to try to improve. So, if you care to join in the conversation, feel free to do so. Otherwise, at this point, the video itself is doing pretty good for a first day. Where I think the count I saw last was 130, 140 views, which for our small channel is pretty decent. Not equivalent to some of the big channels, but at least for us, it's good. So the video is doing fairly strongly, most likely because of the new units and so forth. The other piece that I should comment about, I mentioned it earlier last week. I finished up my apothecary cabinet for paint storage. I posted it up on Etsy. It's also available as a free plan for any YouTube members. It was posted with final designs with some pictures based on the design, the prototype that I built, assembled, and put together, plus a couple of errors in some of the painting, but the basic design, it works really well. Plan to make a couple more just for my own use to expand the paint collection. But right now, after a bit of a miscalculation on how many Army Painter paints I have and need to store, I actually have plenty of space. Plus, it went quite a ways as to clearing up my desk, give me a lot more free space and everything. As a result of that design and the free space I have, I've realized that the airbrush paint that I have for Army Painter is actually only, I think it's called the Mega Set instead of the Complete Set, meaning I have about 50% of the collection rather than 100% like I obviously prefer. So I'm now on a quest to find the other triads, the other additional paints. Started off this week with, and I'm going to check my notes, specifically the Raven Black, the Crow Hue, Shark White, Yeti White, all four of which finish off the black to white gray gradients, and then the triad of Chimera Red, Dragon Red, and Wormling Red. Quite a few others to get. I think in total there is 60 paint colors that I'm missing. So this finishes off the first 7. We've got another 50 plus to go. But my goal is to eventually fill out and use all of that. Now you might ask, why do I use airbrush paints for miniature painting? It's not because I exclusively use the airbrush. I do use the airbrush for terrain and larger pieces and everything, but I'm not that good at it, so I don't use it for miniature painting in general, other than maybe some priming, zenithal coverage, etc. What I use the airbrush paint is because of the theory of that I've heard referred to as too thin coats. And whether it's 2 coats, 3 coats, 5 coats, whatever, the general concept is when you paint figures or miniatures, you're supposed to thin out the paint, get them a little bit more of a glaze consistency rather than the thick paint that a typical paint comes in. So if you have like War Paints Fanatics, that paint comes out relatively thick and you're supposed to thin it down so that it flows well, works on the figures and so forth, and does a thin coating rather than just one coat cover the thing. Old days, I used to just go with the thick paint, cover everything, and I was focused on speed and low quality, so I would just put the paint on and try to get complete coverage, which works in some colors, doesn't work in others. But with the theory of thinning your paints, the advantage I have is if I want to use the airbrush, it's already thinned, it's ready to go. If I don't, it's already thinned and ready to go. So I use airbrush paints as pre-thinned regular colors and just paint those on models in order to get base coats, etc., whenever I need to. Admittedly, a lot of the figures I do are still using Citadel contrast paints just because it's so much easier, works in almost every case. But in a few situations, especially vehicles and ones that have larger flat surfaces, I've been switching over to airbrushing at least a base coat and then using the other paints to get the key pieces and then going with an old style of shadows with some washes plus some highlights on it. Overall, at least from my recent figures, seems to work pretty well. If you've seen some pictures of the Stormtroopers I did recently, those were all painted in the same way. Other than a standard Wraithbone base coat of primer, everything else was Citadel paints with some, well, it was Citadel contrast paints for like the black and for the weapons, and then the base colors, the white, was airbrush paints on top of that. And overall, for at least my technique, my process, that works really well. It gives me the advantage. I don't really worry about the fact that, well, I use less, I have less paint and I'm going to need more. I don't think I've ever used up a dropper bottle of paint unless I'm using it for large terrain, large pieces, at which point I'm not really being efficient with it anyways. So anyways, that's a little bit of an explanation why I use airbrush paints instead of standard traditional paints. Just works out easier for me. And like I said, I can never get the mix right for the airbrush if I need them for airbrush. This way I don't have to worry about it as much. They're basically ready to go right out of the pot. Moving on to future plans. By the time this video comes out, we're going to be getting set up for a recording session for episode 82 of our battle reports. This is going to be a new approach. Battle report obviously is a standard Legion, no difference there. But what I'm trying to do is establish sort of a mini campaign storyline for the battles rather than just pick an army, go to town and beat each other up. So using some AI chat software that I loaded locally on a computer, I generated a framework of a storyline where Rebel, Empire, Separatist, and Republic are all involved, and it puts a basic framework, completely made up, that gives us a sort of a storyline. And the idea here is that matching up 4 different factions, 3 different passes where each faction plays against a different faction, and the storyline sort of dictates the theme of the terrain. It sort of builds a story around it and basically comes up with a mini campaign. So the restrictions I've given the players is they're welcome to participate. They're welcome to use whatever army they want. We'll adjust the storyline based on it. But once they build an army for the first pass, if they win, they keep the same army for later rounds. So in this case, we're playing, episode 82 is Separatists versus Rebels per the storyline based around a Rebel stronghold town that they're fighting over. So our terrain is going to be more city-based with more buildings, blocked line of sight, etc., with 2 factions from the storyline playing out the battle. Based on the results of that, whoever wins goes on and faces off against our eventual Republic versus Empire battle. Gives a little bit more framework to it. Hopefully gives a little bit more sense of let's build a balanced army rather than simply let's build an army to crush this particular foe or this particular faction, which is something that we've struggled with a little bit. I'm all for competition, and several of our players play in local competitions, local events and everything. By all means, go crazy in those. But for our little group, we prefer to keep it much more social and fun. Ideally, we want to have a good game, not just one where the other team just walks all over you and completely stomps you. That's not really fun, and honestly doesn't make for very good video content. So we're trying to balance that out and keep it such that everybody is having fun, plus put some sort of a storyline to it to help motivate and inspire people to make different armies and different tactics rather than just whatever happens to be the perfect mix per forums and other research. So look for that video to come out. Fingers crossed. If the timing works out, it should be posted by next Friday. I'm having a bit of struggle with work schedules and other activities, just keeping up with it, so it may get delayed by another week, but my plan right now is to get it all done by this next Friday. So as part of that, since I just love to add more things to my calendar, and I've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, we have all of our role-playing games getting kicked off again this week. The first one coming up on Sunday is going to be the start of our Kingmaker campaign, something we've been preparing for some time. I've asked each of the 7 players that are participating to create their characters, all level 1 of course, and generate some AI art for each character using, I forget what the software is, but they generated some artwork with some basic parameters, and honestly, they came out all very, very nice. I like the artwork, I like the ideas. Concept, free form, as long as they fit the basic storyline. So coming up, we have, I'm going to run through the 7 characters just for basic familiarity, and I encourage you, if you're interested in the storyline, tune in every other week when we post our videos. Hopefully we get a lot of people following along. It should be a very, very exciting game. We are using the Paizo fully released Foundry setting for the campaign, which includes pre-published or pre-populated dungeons, maps, encounters, pre-scripted events, pre-published music and sound effects. I'm going to try to blend that into the stream, but I'm not 100% sure if that's going to hit a copyright strike or not. If so, I'll have to probably cut that out. But at least for the first episode or 2, I'll be using that. And it's fairly advanced, even up to the point that when the group talks with a merchant or defeats an NPC, they can go and loot the body or buy stuff directly. I don't have to necessarily be involved, and they don't necessarily have to pull out rule books or whatever. They simply click on things and run through it. It is a bit video gamey, and I'm concerned about that because I want it to be a role-playing game, obviously, but the automation should help with a lot of the other bookkeeping and everything that's built into the game as well, so that we can focus on the storyline and the aspects. Characters themselves, so I'm going to get back to that, are fairly creative, wide variety of things, but overall I think they came out pretty well. And again, I'm going to refer to my notes here because there's quite a few of them. First one is an automaton inventor named Otto, being played by my son Ben. The second one is a bit of an interesting one. It's a human ranger that goes by the name of Pink Pirate, played by the other Ben of our group. Not sure exactly what his intent is, but he's definitely pink. Then we have his dad, Jason, playing a elf barbarian named Fenris, which was interesting in that he went with the elf ancestry rather than another one. Not necessarily the most focused on combat damage, but it's an interesting concept. The artwork, again, turned out pretty good for that one. Jenny is playing a elf sword scion rogue. An elf. Originally, we had a different art initially. It was more of an elvish farmer, it looked like. Very, very unobtrusive character. The new one is a bit more capable from a picture standpoint, and I think works with the character a lot better. Then we have an orc magus by the name of Gromuk being played by Carter. Much more of a darker personality in the group. Should be good with generating conflict and resolving conflict. Maguses are relatively powerful based on past history. We have a goblin druid named Pickle Rickle, and he's decided to use a familiar based off of a leshy that is called Fickle Pickle. And from the pictures, he obviously has a pickle theme. Didn't necessarily realize at first that a leshy familiar was technically legal, so I was sort of leaning towards that anyways. I mean, the concept is fine. I don't have any problem with it. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully the familiar will be a lot more than just the pet in the backpack that they tend to be, at least for our group. They tend to get forgotten about because they're so fragile and you don't really want to send them out. But it's a pickle, so but what danger can it really get into? So it'll be interesting to see how that works out with the campaign. And then character number 7 is a human war priest, cleric. Going to be played by Craig, but at the point of recording, I don't have the name yet. So part of their assignment had been to not only come up with a name, come up with a background, come up with some artwork, and pre-populate their character in Foundry. For the most part, I think everything's there. I think we're missing 1 or 2 characters in Foundry, and like I said, at least 1 character name. But that should all get wrapped up within the next day or 2. So that'll let us kick off Kingmaker. Like I said, the first video is being recorded on Sunday. That's our intro adventure portion. And then we'll have the video posted most likely by next week, Friday morning, or this coming Friday morning on our regular schedule. That'll be posted every 2 weeks, depending on schedule and if and when the game ends up getting canceled, based on holidays, etc. Otherwise, we're playing on a set 2-week schedule. Wednesday, we're resuming our Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game. We will be missing Matt, who plays the Elven Archer, but everybody else I think should be there, so we shouldn't have a problem actually playing. The group is currently exploring the old moat house south of the town. I'm forgetting what name it is now. Commandun, a local farming village that specializes in a particular type of tobacco. They've been tracking down Eric Carlsbad and have defeated his initial guards up on the surface, and now are starting to look around the ruins and see what other places are. Still haven't located Eric himself, but that'll probably be the subject of this next session. That, as usual, gets posted once every week. Again, barring schedule changes and so forth, our next session should be this Wednesday. Again, they get posted on Fridays. All the role-playing games do. We just record them at various days during the week. And then the third one that I'm looking forward to myself is the resumption of our Traveler campaign this coming Sunday. This will be episode 2 of it, of the Pirates of Drenax campaign. The group is currently investigating. They've been hired on by the country, or the Drenaxian kingdom, I guess we would call it. The remnants of it, at least, as privateers. And one of their first tasks was to investigate a series of pirate attacks at nearby systems. So they're currently at the Torpal system, investigating an attack, and that's about as far as we got. They know there was a fight. They know one of the ships was communicating with another ship on the surface, and when that ship tried to leave, they engaged a merchant, and the merchant surprised them with some defenses, did heavy damage, and the pirate fled the system. That merchant is still there, so one of their logical next steps is go talk to the merchant, get some information, etc. Plus, they have a second site of attack that they can go investigate while they try to track down all this information. So, again, that comes up next week. Not this Sunday, but another week after that. So, what would be June 9th, I think it is, that Sunday, and then the video will be posted the following week if you care to tune in for our Traveler games. And of course, I've mentioned it a number of times, so I won't go into a lot of detail. June 18th or so, we have our big Axis&Allies game. Should be some pictures, won't probably be posting any videos to it, but should be a whole lot of fun. The other thing I guess I should mention is I've been dabbling on the computer aspects of the hobbies with AI, and I loaded a version of Olama on a local computer. Been using that for generating different things. It ties in with some basic graphics capability as well. So once I get it fine-tuned, I'm going to have it linked into Discord, have it linked into some of the other options. Supposedly, from what I've seen of videos, there's quite a bit of capabilities you can tie it into. And potentially, I'm even going to tie it into some of this material as well as our gaming. So not exactly sure how far I can take it. What I can do, it's starting to get really in-depth and technical, but at least the basic installations I got running pretty well, and everything's working well on that. So that's where some of this inspiration is coming from as far as the different games. So until next time, that is the news for this week. Feel free to subscribe and like the video if you enjoy the content. Otherwise, we will talk again next week. Thanks a lot.